The center of Australia is the driest ground on the driest inhabited continent on Earth. We know that now, but in 1844, an explorer named Charles Sturt marched straight into it, dragging a boat behind him, certain he'd find a sea to sail on. He nearly died out there, looking for water that never appeared. He was wrong about the sea, of course, but his instinct wasn't crazy. The heart of Australia is defined by water, just not the way he thought. It's defined by how little there is, and the strange way that emptiness spreads across a whole continent. That's why this country of 27 million people does something almost no other country does. 95% of them live on about 5% of the land, jammed against the coast, leaving a space the size of the United States nearly empty. It's tempting to blame the heat, but hot deserts all over the world are full of cities. The real reason is written into the ground itself. The easy answer is heat. The interior is hot, it's a desert, and deserts are empty. Case closed. It's not that the heat answer is wrong. It's that it doesn't survive 30 seconds of comparison. Phoenix, Arizona sits in a desert, and the metro area holds nearly 5 million people. Dubai is hotter than most of Central Australia and gets less rain, and it's a gleaming city of over 3 million. Riyadh, Las Vegas, Cairo, all hot, all dry, all full of people. When there's a reason to be somewhere, humans build cities in the harshest heat on Earth and don't think twice. So heat on its own doesn't empty a place out, and the clearest proof of that is in Australia itself. The people who lived in the interior the longest weren't stopped by heat. Aboriginal Australians lived across the whole continent for tens of thousands of years, through the center, through the deserts. They didn't do it by fighting the land. They did it by moving, staying at low density, and reading the country closely enough to know where the water would be and when. They understood the real constraint long before Sturt went looking for his sea. So if it's not the heat, what is it? Start with one number that explains more than any other. Australia has the lowest runoff of any inhabited continent on Earth. Runoff is the water that actually flows across the land after it rains, the stuff that fills rivers that you can catch, store, and build a life around. Australia produces less of it than any inhabited continent, and 1/3 of the continent produces almost none at all. The rain that does fall in the interior mostly just evaporates or sinks and never becomes a river. Compare that to how other dry places actually work. Phoenix is dry, but it pulls water from the Colorado River, fed by snow melting off the Rocky Mountains every spring. California's Central Valley is dry, but the Sierra Nevada dumps snowmelt into it on a schedule you can farm around. Dry places don't need local rain. They need reliable water, arriving from somewhere, and mountains and snowmelt usually provide it. Australia doesn't have that machine. It's the flattest continent, with no great mountain range in the interior to catch snow and feed rivers through the dry months. So there's no steady outside supply to make up for the lack of rain. And the rain it does get is the most variable on the planet. In the interior, one year might bring a little, the next almost nothing. The year after that, a sudden flood. You can't plan around that. This is what nearly killed Sturt. His party got trapped at a single water hole for 6 months waiting for rain, digging an underground room to survive the heat while scurvy set in and one man died. The land didn't run on a schedule. It never has. A farmer needs to know roughly what's coming. The American Midwest gets reliable rain in a predictable season, and that reliability is what let it fill with farms and towns. The Australian interior offers the opposite. Not just dryness, but unpredictable dryness, which is worse because you can't build anything permanent on a coin flip. Say you solved the water somehow, trucked it in, drilled for it, piped it across the desert. You'd hit the next problem, and it's buried in the ground itself. Australia sits on some of the oldest land surface on Earth, and old, in this case, means exhausted. Most of the world's good farmland is young, geologically speaking. It was scraped fresh by glaciers in the last ice age, or built up by volcanoes, or dropped as rich silt by flooding rivers. Those processes make new soil, full of the nutrients plants need. Australia mostly missed all of it. No recent glaciers across the interior, few volcanoes, no great muddy river systems refreshing the land. So the soil has just sat there, weathering, for hundreds of millions of years, the rain slowly washing the nutrients out and nothing putting them back. The result is some of the most nutrient-poor soil on the planet. Even where you find water, the ground often can't grow much with it. You're not fighting one problem, dryness. You're fighting the dryness and the dirt at the same time. This is the layering that makes the interior so hard. Unreliable rain, almost no runoff, dead soil. Any one of those on its own you might engineer around. Stacked on top of each other, they multiply. And there's still one more layer, the one that turns hard to farm into not worth trying. Australia is roughly the size of the continental United States. Now picture growing wheat in the dead center of it. Even if the rain cooperated and the soil produced, you'd be sitting 500, 800, sometimes over 1,000 kilometers from the nearest port. Every seed, every tool, every liter of fuel has to be trucked in across that distance. And every ton of grain you grow has to be trucked back out to reach a buyer. That's the thing that kills interior farming. A wheat farmer in Kansas floats grain down the Mississippi to New Orleans for almost nothing. A farmer in Ukraine ships to the Black Sea. Cheap water transport is what makes bulk farming pay, and the Australian interior has no navigable rivers reaching the coast. The rivers are seasonal, shallow, and often just dry. So everything moves by road or rail over enormous distances at enormous cost. Grain and cattle are cheap per kilogram. They can't absorb it. Now watch what does survive out there, because it proves the whole point. Mining. Iron ore, gold, copper, opals, uranium. The interior is genuinely rich in minerals, and towns like Kalgoorlie and Broken Hill exist precisely because a kilogram of gold is worth shipping 1,000 kilometers, and a kilogram of wheat isn't. When the value per kilogram is high enough, distance stops mattering. When it isn't, distance decides everything. So the interior doesn't fill up with farms and cities. It fills up with mines. And mines don't build permanent communities. They build camps. Workers fly in, work a few weeks, fly back to the coast. The moment the ore runs out, the town empties. That's not settlement. That's extraction with a runway. Put it all together and you get a loop that feeds itself. No reliable water means no dense population. No dense population means nothing to justify the roads, the rail, the hospitals. No infrastructure means the distance penalty never eases. And the distance penalty means the only thing worth doing is high-value extraction, which doesn't need many people, round and round. People sometimes propose ways to break the loop. It's worth being honest about them because they sound good, right up until the arithmetic. Pipe in water from the coast? You'd be pumping it 1,000 kilometers, uphill much of the way, forever, to grow crops worth less than the pumping costs. It's been proposed for a century and never built, because it never pays. Divert the wet northern rivers south into the desert? Studied for decades, under the name the Bradfield Scheme, and shelved every time for the same reason. You'd spend a fortune moving water to land that still couldn't compete with the coast. Subsidize people to move inland? The moment the checks stop, they leave, because the underlying math never changed. None of these fail because Australians lack ambition or engineering skill. They fail because the geography sets the price, and the price is always too high. Meanwhile, the coast keeps winning, and winning harder. Here's the number that says it all. The rainy coastal fringe is about 5% of Australia's land, and it holds about 95% of the people. 87% of Australians live within 50 kilometers of the sea. The cities there have the water, the ports, the jobs, and each other. Population attracts more population. The center never enters that cycle at all. Go back to Charles Sturt, dragging his boat toward the middle of the map, certain he'd find a sea to sail. He had the right instinct and the wrong answer. He sensed that the center of Australia was ruled by water, and he was correct. He just assumed the water was there. The truth turned out to be stranger and more permanent than any inland sea. The center is ruled by water that never arrives, on soil too old to use it, too far from the coast to matter. Sturt found a desert and called it a disappointment. But the emptiness he ran into wasn't a failure. It was the land telling him what it could and couldn't support. Every farmer and every failed settlement scheme since has heard the same answer. Australia isn't empty in the middle because nobody was tough enough to fill it. It's empty because the geography did the math a long time ago, and the answer has never changed. People just live where the land lets them. The world has a structure. Let's keep finding it.